Political stakeholders and pro-democracy groups in Rivers State have condemned the planned August 30 local government elections, calling them unconstitutional. In a statement to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they argued that the elections are being driven by an unelected federal appointee, violating Nigeria's constitution and due process. The groups highlighted the lack of a legally constituted Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission as required by law. They also pointed out the failure to give the mandatory 90-day notice before elections, accusing the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission of procedural flaws similar to those that led to the annulment of the 2024 polls. With ongoing court cases challenging the legitimacy of the sole administrator and the ICC, RISEC, the stakeholders argued it is improper to proceed with the elections. They further noted that Rivers State is in a constitutional crisis, with its executive and legislative arms suspended by the federal government. As the debate continues on the legality or otherwise of the planned Rivers State local government election, spokesperson of Rivers Civil Society Organization, Solomon Lenu, joins me now from Port Harcourt for a conversation. Good afternoon, Solomon Lenu, and thank you for joining us on This Day Live here on the Arise News channel. Well, Solomon Lenu, what is the complaint about? After all, there was a federal government gazette which adjusted Section 2 of the RCIEC RISEC Act, empowering the sole administrator to conduct these elections and, for the suspension of the existing Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission. And now some stakeholders in Rivers State are saying, oh, this August 30 election is unconstitutional, but there's a law backing it up. So where is the problem, in your view?
Thank you, Ruben, for having me, and good evening, Rivers people and Nigeria at large. Well, the situation that Rivers people has found, themselves today is a very, very unfortunate one because, of course, when people begin to raise concerns, about this planned election, it is something that everybody who is a conscious Nigeria today will know where their worries, is coming from. Because, of course, we did election in October last year, spent some, good amount of scarce resources on that process for which, the Supreme Court, nullified because the right processes were not followed. And here we are again, embarking on similar voyage. And of course, there are, signs and actions that also suggest that this proposed election could as well, end up the same way that the one of October, ended up. And of course, in all of this, it is the scarce resources that were supposed to be used to better the lives of Rivers people that are being wasted. But beyond that, if you look at the laws of Nigeria and what is going on here today, people like us in the civil society space and every other conscious Nigeria has, a good case or a good cause to worry about what is happening. Because if you say that the sole administrator is acting based on a power that has been given to him, by the suspension of a section of the Constitution and the laws of Rivers State by the president, then you begin to ask, when was that powers given to him? And then juxtapose it with the time for which the sole administrator actually, dissolved the existing RISEC that we had here and appointed the ones that he appointed. At that time, we didn't have such laws or such suspension of any section of the Rivers State laws, such as the one that, was brought up a few days ago, attributed to the president. And by so doing, it's illegitimized whatever action that had been taken by the sole administrator with regards to the conduct of this election, because of course laws are not retrospective in nature. You cannot take an action today and then go back tomorrow to go and make a law to suit that action that you are taking, because like they say in law, you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So that is also one very, very vital reason for the concerns that you are seeing here. But beyond that, I think we've gotten to a point where Rivers people have to come together, sheath their sword no matter what it is, tell themselves the honest truth, to say that we have been fighting ourselves for a very long time, to a point now that we have sold out ourselves to detractors and traducers who don't actually mean well for us. Because it is only when we do that we can come together as a people to actually look at ourselves and tell ourselves the truth, so that we can actually solve the problems that we ourselves have actually brought upon ourselves today. So when I hear people complain like that, I think it is a legitimate complaint. I have been complaining, but of course it gets to a point in time when when you've done everything and nothing is working, you have to have some retrospect, and sit back and look at what you've been doing and see how you can do something differently. I think is the reason why some of the things here in Rivers State and they are happening, and then we any reaction from Rivers people. It's not as though Rivers people cannot react. It's not as though Rivers people didn't have to do all the past they are known for. But of course, it was Albert Einstein that says that insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've fought for so long.
Okay.
We've been in these trenches, so it's time for us to actually do things differently.
Well, Solomon Lenu, I get your point about how the federal government tampered with Section 2, Subsection 2 of the RESEC law of 2018. But let's talk about the people. Most of the people who said they were PDP members, they all showed up during the primaries to line up for APC, right? And then, were there campaigns? Was there any electioneering before the primaries? But at least the people, they showed up for APC, including people who have been PDP. So forget about law. It looks like PDP in Rivers State has already dissolved into the APC. It's called realpolitik, pragmatic politics. The reality. Isn't that the reality?
Well, I think metaphorically speaking, the signs and wonder that Christ did, politicians here in Rivers State has not said is the signs of what that they've done. I can tell you that is the clear, definition of the so-called primaries that was where people, PDP regalia and everything, and went into PDP members only for a transfiguration to happen, and they came out as APC, members with appointments and nominations, as APC members and all of that. That can only happen, in a place where great signs and wonders are happening, But it's quite unfortunate, because most times when things like this happen, it is of great concern because it sets a dangerous precedent. And to even realize that, these are some of the supporters and people who were also part and parcel of those who defected openly, only to come back and tell Nigerians that they never defected, that what they were doing was theatrics that shouldn't be counted, against them, leaves people worried. Because for what is what, leadership should, be predicated upon honesty and integrity. But sadly, in Nigeria today, the leadership cadre of our country, the people involved had made a mess of what leadership should be. They openly tell lies. They openly say one thing in the morning and come back, in the evening to say something else, because, of course, the electorates are not conscious enough to hold them responsible to their words and their actions. And this is the reason why Nigeria is still in the doldrum where we are today. But it is important for Nigerians to all rise up at a time like this, because today it might be happening in Rivers State, and then you think because you are in Sokoto or you are in Kaduna, it doesn't affect you. But of course, the precedent that is set here can enable and empower other people to do similar thing in wherever you are tomorrow. And that's the reason why people like us will continue to still talk, even at the time where it's been proven that the people who are bent on destroying our democracy, and Rivers State in particular, doesn't give a hoot about what we feel or what we say. But of course, it's still important for us to continue saying it, because it's important that history will record it, that at a time like this, people actually said something.
Okay, I've heard you. Next question. Now, one big elephant in the room in the Rivers State politics is the role of the minister of the FCT in this matter, the role of Nyesom Wike, minister FCT. People have asked, for example, that why they hurry the elections? Why were the persons who are going to be involved and the political parties, why were they not given the 90 days notice as required by law? What do you think? Do you think, as people say on the streets, that it's Wike that is manipulating everything, and because President Bola Ahmed Tinubu needs votes from the South, he's just indulging Minister Wike? What's your reaction to that? Speaking for civil society organizations in Rivers State.
Well, it's funny the way sometimes the media, throw these questions, because, it's an obvious question that the answer is right there in the public domain. Of course, even as we work towards peace, because of course that is the only panacea for development, we still would not, forget, the route with which, we took, to get here, and who did what and who played what role and how we ended up where we are. Of course, the minister is an integral part of everything that has happened to Rivers State today. And it's also very interesting to see that right now, and this is an information, if people don't know, is the one that is working the most to see how, the democratic leadership and governance of Rivers State can be restored, even though, he played an important role in bringing about the situation that we are in today. And this goes to tell us that sometimes, when we think that we have become very bigger than life, when we think we have all the powers, it is also very important for us to also remember that, there is one, supernatural being that is above every other. Right now, today, the minister, the same thing that he wanted, whether overtly, or covertly, is the same thing that he was working so hard to bring an end to. And right now, the ball is no longer in his court. But, I commend him. Of course, in every family, there are times when people will have disagreement and frictions, but it is always very important that we know when to draw the line and when to take a break, so that we don't allow the kind of situation that we're having here in Rivers State now, where a total stranger will come and inherit, our common patrimony, and then all the resources that accrue to Rivers State as we speak today, nobody can actually account for it. So these are some of the things that has happened. But of course, the minister brought about the whole situation because of his own insistence that he wants to control, and a structure that, an invisible structure that is neither here nor there. But today, it is obvious that the roles that he played, not just him alone, some of the roles that a lot of the actors played, were actually inimical, to the growth and development of Rivers State. And then today they are working so hard to see how they can reverse that. But of course, it is important to also inform them and the general public that the time lost, the resources lost, can never, be regained. And this is some of the indelible lessons that we should glean, from what has happened, so that we can actually arm ourselves with it for future actions and the way we carry on about what we do. That's the way it is.
Okay.
Right now in Rivers State, people are not very happy, but of course we are living and partly living.
Okay, you are a spokesperson for Rivers State civil society organizations.
The immediate past spokesperson, sorry, I needed to correct that. I resigned my appointment.
Okay, but you are still part of the community.
Yeah.
So you still speak one way or the other as a member of that community. Now, let me ask you, what do you think? What are your hopes for the future of Rivers State? Minister Wike had said, President Tinubu has said after the expiration of the 6 months suspension, declaration of state of emergency, it will be lifted. Now, maybe perhaps after the local government elections, August 30, that will happen. But how do you think the situation will be in the event of that? Hereafter, what are your hopes? What are your expectations? What do you think might happen?
Well, I think, to be honest, my hopes are not very high, in the sense that, like I said, I've been issued the time we lost, the resources and all of the things that we've wasted cannot be regained. It's very unfortunate because, of course, today, if you go around Rivers State, all corners of Rivers State is begging for development. People, are going through hard times and stuff. And at a time when we should, be focused on development, Rivers State, over the years, had been neck deep into what I call illicit politicking that does not bring, any profit or dividend of democracy to the people of Rivers State. And I say this with all, honesty, without contradiction, that the style of politics that, our politicians or our leaders had played, over the years had not been very beneficial to us. So right now, if they lift the suspension and then the democratic structures are back, would that have solved, the problem that necessitated the problem? Will the minister now be happy, that he had gotten back, his structure? And then the structure, the invisible structure that we fought for, that brought us here, of what benefit is it to the generality of Rivers people? So you look at it, at the end of the day, we have leaders who think more of themselves, and not about the people. And that's one thing that we must correct, moving forward. That's one thing that, our electoral system, had not done us good with, because the skewness and the weakness in our institutions, especially our electoral system, enables, people to impose, their supporters, their stooges upon the people. And at the end of the day, they end up, paying loyalty to the people who brought them without recourse to the electorate who ordinarily they should be accountable for. So, moving forward, there is a great deal of work that the governor have to do, because, of course, the governor started on a very good note. He implemented projects. He was very ambitious. And one thing that everybody can attest to is the fact that the governor actually meant well for Rivers people with, the arrays of projects and the diversion from the norm, the way he did it. But look at today, everything has been stalled. All the projects, I went around recently to go and look at all the wonderful projects that the governor, was embarking upon. Everything has ceased, not because the resources is not coming, but because we have an alien. I call this whole administrator an alien to Rivers people, who is in charge, who doesn't care about us. So the governor is going to have a great deal of work to do. He's going to have to think strategically. Otherwise, just like the minister said, in one of the broadcasts in the early days of this crisis, that he knows that he may not win, but he will make the governor to suffer, and that people will hold him accountable, that it is his own administration, that was distracted. Of course, that might happen if something pragmatic is not done when the governor returns, because, of course, a whole lot of time has been wasted. And then the time, of course, we know how our Nigerian system operates. The moment, this year ends, 2016 is all going to be about politics. And you won't have much time again to, to concentrate on development of the state and for the people. So
Solomon,
it's sad.
Solomon Lenu, let's be fair. The president of Nigeria declared a state of emergency. For close to 6 months now, the sole administrator that you call an alien let's give him some credit.
Of course.
Has helped to at least maintain the peace, stabilize the situation in Rivers State. But you say he has done nothing. I mean, isn't that too much of a harsh, commentary on the past 6 months? After all the elders coming out, all the youths claiming fire and brimstone, everybody calm down. I think within the period that, Abasi Bokite, AVM has been there, he's been able to calm down the situation a bit. You should be willing to give him that credit, and you should be able to recommend that to the civil society organizations. He didn't ask for the appointment.
Well, Ruben, I can tell you, I can tell you without contradiction that there were no problem, in Rivers State. If you look at the Constitution section 305, where the president derived his power to declare a state of emergency here, it clearly spelled out the things that should happen before such actions, will be taken. But of course, right now we've gone past all of that. Harping on that would be akin to crying over a spilled milk. But I tell you, there was no crisis in Rivers State. So when people say that the sole administrator was brought here to maintain peace, I keep wondering, I keep asking people, were there, crisis in Rivers State? What we had here, for the most part was just, an internal political crisis, not even between two political parties, but between just one political party, something you can call a family affair. But we see how, because of interest and because some people, were closer to, the power at the center and all of those things, they took the whole thing out of context and imported narratives, that are neither here nor there, and used it, to cause a crisis that will live with us, for the end of our lives. And people say that the man came here to solve a problem. We didn't have any crisis in Rivers State. And in fact, it is even right now that we have crisis, because if you come to Rivers State now can best be described as a garbage city. Right now, I can tell you, that you have a lot of sparks of insecurity here and there, because of course the man who is in charge does not the dynamics of Rivers State. So for all that is what, the state of emergency had actually brought in more crisis that our issue was not here to Rivers people. So I will not, be one of those people that will sit down and accept the fact that Ibas had, created any form of peace or whatever, because we didn't have any crisis before he came.
Okay, as a Rivers State indigenous nationalist spokesperson, all of that, I expect that you will not like an alien, using your word, coming to Rivers State. But are there guarantees that these August 30 local government elections will not end up like the same elections that they had in 2024 local government elections, which the Supreme Court annulled? Do you think this will go smoothly and then, Rivers State will move forward? Trying to talk about the future of Rivers State.
Well, right now, Ruben, I think if you ask me as a person, I think we've gotten to a point where everybody had decided to, shield their sword and then just allow, the process to go on. But I can tell you that if that process happens on the 30th, and then people, which of course they've already started litigating against the process, people go to court and it is put before, even the weakest judicial trial, that process may not stand. And that's why you see some people like the elders and all the people that are raising concerns because, of course, comparing this election that they want to hold now with the one that happened on October, if you bring it before the Supreme Court, in fact, the Supreme Court will be, more angrier than it were, about the previous election compared to this one, because, of course, right now as we speak, the judgment of the Supreme Court on the 28th of February rightly stated that the previous election did not follow the stipulated laws. And today we have that as a precedent judgment that is the law, that is subsisting law today, because of course such pronouncements are the law. And then you openly, boldly have the temerity to go against it. So what do you think that the law will say? Of course, maybe because people feel that right now we have some people who are bigger than the law. The country now have some very powerful individuals, and then when they rise up to speak or to take any decision, the law bows down to whatever decision they are taking. That's the only thing that is giving the courage for people to want to go ahead with that action. But if you ask me as a conscious Rivers person, I'll tell you there is no need for the rush. Right now, the minister and the governor had come together. There is peace now. At least that's what they say. Why not, calm down and then do this thing the way it should go, so that at the end of the day, we don't end up, embarking on a process, wasting scarce resources that, will be thrown, through the window when it gets to the court again. Okay. So I don't know why, we are going that direction. But of course, politicians will always be politicians, and they know the reason why they are doing what they are doing.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Solomon Lenu, for joining us on this Live, the Sunday talk show, and for your insights. We'll keep a watching brief on developments in Rivers State, as we've been doing for the past 2 years or thereabouts, and even much longer. Thank you very much indeed.